Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the Industrial Innovators Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a partnership between Strata Edge Technologies and Deacon Jet Lube. So, our guests today are Strata Edge and Innovators Operations Leader, Mr. Michael Brown, and Steve from Deacon Jet Lube. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks for having us.
So, let's start with Steve. Steve, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you got into the industrial sealing space.
Yeah, so I've been with the organization now. It'll be 20 years as of July. So I've been with the company a long time. Started right out of college and kind of worked my way up through the organization. We used to be a privately held entity, and then in 2015, we were acquired by JetLube. So we're a publicly traded entity. We operate as Whitmore Manufacturing. So that's going to be the JetLube brands, the Deacon brands. But my responsibility is as the director of Whitmore Manufacturing on the Deacon side of things. We deal with the online injectable sealants. We also have the engineered carbon fiber composite wraps, fiberglass, water activated wraps, and then we have a line of thread and flange sealants. So on the Deacon side of things, what really sets us apart from the competition is, the higher temperature rated products, the injectables, we can go up to almost 1,000 degrees Celsius. And on the low end, we can go into the cryogenic applications. So a very wide range of operating temperatures, pressures from vacuum up to 6,000 PSI, and pretty much every chemical that you guys could encounter, whether it's in the petrochemical space or elsewhere. We're going to have a injectable compound that'll be able to solve your leak sealing needs.
Awesome. So that's the Deacon and JetLube side of things. Mike, tell us about Strata Edge and what that company is all about.
Yeah, so we started Strata to supply not only our competitors, but end users that we actually do work for through Innovator to be able to self-perform in areas that they feel comfortable to do so. So we have a line of products that we sell, including sealants, composite repairs. We sell tooling, all med safety tools. There's a long laundry list of things that we supply through Strata, and we just felt that it made sense for us to create a partnership with Deacon, especially as, one of those products is engineered enclosures that we can sell in some scenarios, and we can package it in with everything that you'd need to do the install, right down to the pump. So there's a lot of synergy between the two companies that we can make it work.
Right. So the big aha then is connecting the dots between Strata Edge and its inventory of enclosures and the leak sealing hardware and Deacon's full suite of sealants and lubricants, and somehow packaging that together for clients to have a turnkey solution.
Correct. And with our footprint that we have across Canada, I think that it makes sense for us to be able to provide the sealant to anyone that really needs it. We've made sales in partnership with Deacon in Atlantic Canada and Ontario and Saskatchewan. So there's a couple of spots that we have made the sales that we can help facilitate this. Yeah.
So where does Strata have warehousing that can service the country?
Fort McMurray, Edmonton, Hamilton, and Atlantic Canada in New Brunswick.
Covering a whole bunch of the major industrial centers across the country. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about leaks and maintenance in general. What do you think some of the biggest pain points are for customers when they're experiencing leaks, and in a variety of ways? Steve, what's your perspective on what are the major pain points from customers and how can Deacon help solve them?
Yeah, so I think from our end, being a US based company, we have customers all throughout Canada, but I think having stock available locally, which we'll accomplish through this partnership with Strata. So with the emergency nature of leak repair, they didn't need something 5 minutes ago. Now they need it and they have to have it. So a lot of times in these facilities, their options are going to be let something leak, which you can only do for a short period of time. They can shut down, which there's a big cost associated with doing so, or you have something off the shelf, a clamper enclosure with the sealant, and go in and do an installation and the plant stays up and running. Didn't have the need to shut down. So I think needing something quick, locally available is something that we can really accomplish through this. We have a long-standing history of doing business with Innovator, and we sell to a variety of contractors up in Canada, but nobody's actually really stocking the product, has it on the shelf today. So I think from that perspective, the contractors can be faster, more reactive, be able to take care of their customers simply by having everything available, one-stop shop that Strata is looking to provide.
Mike, what's your perspective in splitting it up between Innovator as a service provider, but Strata as a material and training center for everyone, not just Innovator's customers? Because you're selling to anyone in the industry, general contractors, anyone who wants to self-perform, including competitors of Innovator, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you think this packaging and this off-the-shelf solution, stocking solution does for pain points in the industry across the country?
Well, it just makes it easily accessible. I mean, we've sold quite a bit of product, not only just sealants, but wrap materials and some equipment and some rentals to some of our direct competitors a fair bit over the past, call it 2, 3 months. And it's starting to gain a lot more traction. But I think that it makes everything easier on the end users because I mean, back in the day, let's say that one of our competitors didn't have a sealant or a wrap on the shelf and they had a leak, but they were the only ones orientated for site, or they were already on site and they have the client relationship and Innovator doesn't have our foot in the door to go do that service. We have the ability to still help out and we can just sell the product that's needed for them to self-perform.
I think an interesting point is a handful of leak repair service providers across the country. Most of them have provided sealants and material specification sheets to their clients to have that material pre-approved. But a lot of them are brand labeled that they're coming from Beacon. Is that a fair assessment of how you
I
see
would
things?
say I would say 90% of the sealants that I've seen have been Deacon. I mean, they're the flagship of sealant for sure in Canada, especially when it comes to online leak sealant.
So I think for our end user customers, they might have particularly what I call specification stakeholders, people who are looking at the details of materials that are approved. They probably don't even know that their Deacon sealant is actually approved. It's simply got a different name on it.
Yeah, I mean the SDSs would all be the same, and when you go back through it, it will be that. But what happens is some vendors, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but there could be a competitor of ours that would take like 854 for an example is actually 454, and just switch one of the numbers around to make it unique to themselves. But at the end of the day, it's still the same seal.
Right.
Yeah.
On
And
the
that's
data
kind of
sheet,
what
it
we've
still feeds back to Deacon and Whitmore as the manufacturer.
Yes.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Don. So a lot of times we kind of talk amongst ourselves that the Deacon name might not be as well known out there because a lot of times there are a lot of private label accounts. So in Canada alone, I mean, we've probably private labeled for 8 or 10 different companies over the years. Sometimes they use our product code, sometimes they have their own. But like Mike said, sometimes they just change a few numbers. Those are all approved in the plants. They're all from the same manufacturer for the most part, but we do a lot of private labeling. So a lot of times the Deacon name is not as well known really as it should be because it is under private label, but the products have been out there and readily been used in this space since 1988 when we launched commercially and started selling these all over the world.
So if we've got, and I really brought that up because I want to remove a potential obstacle for end users who go, well, we don't want to jump through the hoops of getting those new products approved when in reality, they're probably already approved in their system. They just got to look down through the material data sheet and find out that it's actually a Deacon product that was introduced to them by some contractor with private label numbering. So let's pivot a little bit and dive into some of the top Deacon products and the JetLube products and let's talk about what they do for customers. Can you guys give me your top 2 or 3 that you want to talk about in terms of their capabilities, in terms of the applications they're for?
So, really, what separates the Deacon products from the competition with the Deacon products, the ones that are phenolic resin based that cure with heat, those products cure to what would best be described as like a leather or plastic like consistency. So, there's other manufacturers out there that have products that, whenever they're exposed to heat, they become very hard. They can be brittle. You know, some of the products out there that have been used in the industry for years, they can cure to almost a ceramic consistency. So if that piping system cycles in temperature or pressure and you develop a leak over time, you can't re-inject it. So with the Deacon products, they're very resilient when it comes to thermal cycling. The fact that they cure to a more flexible consistency allows them to be re-injected if needed, so the leak can be fully maintained. Whereas other products that set up extremely hard with heat or ones that are hard to pump to begin with, some of the manufacturers in India and China that have competitive products, they take a significant amount of injection pressure to get them to move. So, along with that, when you're injecting a product that takes a very high pressure to pump through your injection fitting, you're putting added stress on the piping system. So, with that, travel's limited. So, just as an example, if you put a clamp on with a Deacon compound, let's just say you need 10 injection valves to get that sealant to travel around the perimeter. With a competitor product, you might need 40 injection valves because you either don't get the travel or it cures so quickly, it doesn't fill that entire perimeter in. So, pumpability, a variety of different consistencies. We have about 75 different products. So, whether it's a phenolic resin that cures to a plastic like consistency, or we do have ones that cure very hard, like I was mentioning the competitors have, we have that as well. We also get into the graphite based compounds that are more sealed by compression, or the Teflon based compounds. We have sealants for oxygen, acids. So just having a wide array of sealants that can really seal anything out there that you could come in contact with. And we have a compatibility chart that's updated monthly that has 1,400 different chemicals in it. So we're constantly updating those charts. We're always involved in R&D activities to see what we don't have that we need to have in our line to kind of, evolve. But really the wide range of products, the applications we can seal successfully really has separated us from the competition over the years.
I think the chemical compatibility chart that looks at all the chemicals, applications, and temperatures can be really useful for listeners to kind of understand the depth and the breadth of all the sealant capabilities that are available. I know we regularly get sort of frontline end user customers inquiring, and they're always concerned about, for particular applications, are they going to be able to use the valve again if they inject sealant? And their history has been someone has injected something to make them think that this valve is no longer ever going to be used. And so, Mike, can you talk about different applications and what customers would experience with different sealants from your point of view? Because obviously, in addition to running operations, you come grassroots as a leak sealer yourself.
Yeah, I keep mine pretty close actually. I got the sealant manual right here because I reference it multiple times a day. Even though I don't plan a lot of operational jobs, I still talk about them daily with the people that do within the office because it's like a passion of mine. But yeah, we've got like a couple that would be cool just to touch on is like VP 1200. So for instance, we get asked multiple times a week to inject either valve packings or upstream line blocks or valve seat injections to give some sort of a isolation or stop the packing leak. And what the customers will assume is that when you say, I'm going to seal the valve, I got sealant, that they think that it won't ever move again. And that's certainly not the case. We can inject packings, and actually, as we inject the packing, we can back the follower studs off and refill it with VP 1200. And in that scenario, our clients can actually retighten the packing if it starts to leak again before we even need to come out and do a re-injection. Like if it's done correctly, and we can inject these packings and essentially shoot packing in it while it's online. So that's one that is near and dear to our heart. We buy a lot of that product and we install a lot of that product because it's really good. It's a great bridging sealant, and like I said, it doesn't cure. Another one that we would use frequently would be something like 454 or 800. You're pushing these into things with hydrocarbon and you want it to set up and you want it to cure, and that's for high temperature applications. So we would use that frequently. Rubbers is commonly used. Thin injectable things like 770 or 770L, you'd use those to inject things like leaking threads, fin fan plugs, you name it. There's a full list of things that you would need that thin sealant for. Line crimping, we would use something that would cure up. So it just kind of really depends on like application, curing and not curing. A lot of Teflons because we do deal with a lot of acids as well. we will inject those, and those are non-curing compounds. And then also it goes as far as food grade sealants, right? Like you guys have things that we can inject potable water lines and everything else on. So there's a laundry list of them. Myself and Steve know them pretty well, but I think that things like this and chats like this and bringing out the product every once in a while when new products come and talking about their applications is what will be useful for customers.
I think the key is doesn't matter, I mean, we service pressurized systems overall. That could be a brewery with food grade needs for water or beer. It can be an oxygen plant or a hydrogen plant, lots of oil and gas, lots of steam. And the key, I think, for listeners is we got it all covered. When on the service side, we always start with a data sheet from the customer on what the application is. And a really important part of that data sheet, which sometimes customers are maybe resistant or reluctant to take the time to fill it out, is making sure we select the right sealant, right? So
Steve, I see you had a comment there.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say when Dawn was first talking about that the end users, the plants, they're more familiar with something that binds up a valve and makes it unusable. We do have those types of products. If somebody wants to kill the valve, that's what they refer to it, killing the valve. Sure, we can do that. But like you were talking about, Mike, VP 1200, 289, 389, you want something that lubricates, seals, but allows that valve to continue to be open and closed, fully maintainable. So it really depends on the product. Like you said, it could be hydrocarbons and steam, that kind of powers the petrochem world, but it could be acids, it could be a food grade application. So it really depends on the actual application parameters in the plant. But we're going to have something that suits your needs, definitely.
we talked a little bit about the partnership and stocking. Mike, can you just touch on what else Strata is doing that is we're bringing into our stocking situation that really kind of creates a synergy with the Deacon lineup?
Yeah, I think we have on order over 200 stock enclosures from various sizes, all the way from 1/2 inch up to 6 inch, and the oddball in between the 2.5. We got 3 inch, 4 inch straight lines, elbows. We've got T's available. We have injection valves themselves, long ones with extensions, medium ones with extensions, just short injection valves, carbon, stainless, you name it, like a full suite of leak repair equipment and stock enclosures.
And you're doing line crimp blocks as well, right? For the
Correct.
line.
Yeah. 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 100%. And actually, we're looking at a new technology in the coming weeks that would allow us to crimp pipes up to 12 inch.
Right. Which I'm really excited as you go and explore that next week.
Hmm.
Right now we can crimp up to what size?
Four, four
So we
inch.
can crimp lines up to 4 inch and moving the technology potentially up to 12 inch in the coming weeks ahead. And then being able to have the right sealants on the shelf along with the right hardware. Talk about where all that hardware is going to be
Uh,
and
well,
the stocking sealants, right?
yeah.
That
So,
common.
so by the end of this year, and when I say this year, our fiscal year, because we run October through. So by October 1st, I plan to have stock leak repair enclosures and sealant in both Edmonton area, so Alberta, Ontario, and New Brunswick.
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about a few case studies, a few examples of challenging jobs that you guys have solved with a combination of leak repair methods and the right sealants. What comes to mind as some ones that stand out for you, Mike?
For us, I think that, I mean, any time that we go up against a job with a leak, you could call it challenging. So it's hard to pick one out. I mean, they're all broken when we get there. So I find them all to be pretty substantial. But there is a couple in mind that I would have, and like these would be, I mean, leak repair enclosures it's not a standard thing, but it's standard to us. So we're putting a designed encapsule over a leaking device and we're injecting it. So it's fairly common. But for things that I find impressive with these sealants that they can hold up to is really high temperature applications and high pressure applications. So like we do superheated steam leaks and we'll inject these on valves that you literally can't see the leak coming from initially, right? Like you'll get up to the floor on where it's leaking and you can hear it and you can feel it, but you can't see it. And then they'll scale it and they'll say, this is where it is. And we have a method of putting in with a high pressure packing gland, and we can break safely into the process, and we'll inject this compound, and it will hold up to things north of 4,000 pounds of pressure and really, really high temperature applications. And I mean, I'm talking about as soon as the injection valve is opened, it literally is it's a very gratifying feeling, because it goes from like a full chaos situation, you know what I mean? It's instant, and the sealant holds long, long term, which is very cool. I find that to be one of the pretty good applications. And then Steve kind of touched on it, but what I love about Deacon's product is the ability for it to travel. Like in scenarios where you're even doing re-injections or injecting very tight areas, like it's kind of it's not a very common thing that comes up to have people that have experience in drilling fin fan plugs. But when you inject like a 770 liquid and you're shooting very fine national course thread, to get it sealed around that is very delicate. And like for it to travel that way with it being that thin, is there's some pretty cool applications with that kind of stuff. So the high pressure, high temperature, the ability for it to travel, all of those. And then I don't think that there's many products, which I like too about Deacon, that they don't have an answer for. Hydrofluoric acids, oxygen service, nuclear grade sealants. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that you can buy through them. So when it comes to like applications, I don't think that there's much that we can't find an answer for when it comes to the sealing compound.
How about you, Steve? What, it doesn't have to be specifically in Canada. When you
Yeah.
think about your history, you've been at Deacon for over 20 years. What are some really interesting challenge case studies that you've come across that you've had to help solve?
Yeah, Don, I think boiler feed water is always a challenging application because, especially, you get into the ones that are around 300 degrees Celsius and, 4,500 psi. So you're talking high pressure, high temperature. We came out with a product recently, our 402 XT, that it almost cures to like a truck tire consistency. So that provides immediate resistance to not blow out upon injection. But when it cures, it still maintains flexibility as well. In really kind of bad blow situations, whether it's high pressure steam, boiler feed water, we also have a product, 911 and Seal Chief, that set up really hard and fast. So that kind of resists against extrusion or blowing out upon injection. So I think about that. Mike mentioned flue gas. I mean, you could have something high temp and abrasive like a catalyst as well. So we have sealants that work really good against catalysts, but just those nasty chemicals, HF acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid, kind of the nasty acids where you'd be using a PTFE based sealant. We've also come out in the last year with a rubber based sealant as well called HF 700 that can be used on hydrofluoric acid. So it works really well in that environment as well. But like we've kind of talked about, really anything from cryogenic temperatures up to close to 1,000 degrees Celsius, we're going to have a product within our portfolio that's going to be able to handle those tough chemical and pressure and temperature environments.
And just when you think that you have a leak that you're not going to be able to get the sealant to seal it up and bridge it, they also provide bridging compound that you can break the sticks apart and actually add to the sealant to give it some more bulking and get it to catch and bridge and all sorts of things when you're doing injecting. So I think that the bridging compound's another sweet thing that Deacon offers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
I,
good
I
point,
mean, I
Mike. So we've been talking about the injectable compounds. I mean, you've referenced 770L and, some of the other sealants we have. So it's important to note, we have these available in stick form, and then we also have liquid and paste sealants available as well. So different viscosities. We have the fiber additives, whether it's PTFE or more of a fibrous ceramic type additive, Kevlars. We have different things that can be added into the sealants to achieve a different viscosity and also aid with bridging. And then combine that with, we have the injection guns as well. So we're not just the injectable sealant guys. We have other products that are reused by the leak sealing contractors, from the packing rope to the injection guns, the injection fittings, and so forth.
That brings up one more that I was thinking about too. You guys also have a compound that you can coat your sealant in, and it will cut the curing time in half. So it'll help
Exactly.
accelerate curing, which
Exactly.
is another sweet thing too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's an important thing to discuss, Mike, because 103P accelerator is what you're referring to. So
Mm.
a lot of the compounds in our line and competitors' lines, the cure speed, if it's a heat reactive sealant, is based on how much temperature you have. The more heat you have, the faster it cures and vice versa. The beauty about the 103P, it's kind of a granular consistency. It looks like sugar or salt, but it can reduce your cure time by 80%. So it allows the compound to be more susceptible to temperature, so it can cure at a lower temperature and in a shorter period of time. So, just as an example, with the 454 we talked about, if you were at 200 degrees Celsius and you're pumping a few sticks, it might take 4 to 6 hours to fully cure. But if you mix that accelerator in there, I mean, you can achieve a full cure in about 30 minutes. So it gives you time to pump the sealant, but it does greatly reduce the amount of heat and time required to reach a full cure.
I come from old school leak sealing. I learned from guys who were doing it in the 70s and 80s, and I never did as much leak repair as Mike. I would say I'm more on the mechanical side, but I've got a few years of leak sealing under my belt. But when I was coming up and learning it, the available sealants that we had at our disposal at the time was a handful. And it was dependent on the contractor brand. And there's a couple of big brands out there that have been around for a long time that manufactured their own sealants. And they didn't let you use anything but their stuff. And often that was a very limited selection. And so technicians had to figure stuff out on their own to get stuff to seal. And so, to Mike's point on bridging, I mean, I grew up when I was in my 20s out with guys who were in their 40s and 50s at the time. It makes me feel old now, but because I thought they were ancient at the time, they would go into a machine shop and they would collect all the metal filings. I had one, even though it was against our company policy, I had several technicians that when I looked at under the back seat of their truck, they always had metal coffee cans full of different sizes of ball bearings. And I tell you what, if you work with an old school leak sealer who was taking bridging agent, but they didn't have a sealant that could do it, they'd start mixing in different size ball bearings into the sealant and pumping it in so that you could get something to seal up. And if it didn't hold under high pressure, you had to duck and run because all of a sudden, when it would blow out, there would be buckshot and birdshot firing out of these leaks. And so having this wide array of chemistry that Deacon has now, 25, 30 years ago, when I was a helper on leak repair, that would have been a godsend. I had a technician who came to work for us who worked for one of those brands and was talking about his limited options in terms of sealant. And he literally said to me, I tried to cut up coverall clothes and packed it in there. I was taking tin foil and packing it into the sealant. And he said, Don, by the time I was done, I saw a dead frog on the ground and I stuffed it into my injection gun and I pumped it in there. And that's what finally got it to hold. And I mean, literally, these are the stories of leak sealers who needed to figure out a way to bridge a gap to get the sealant that in theory should hold if you could keep it in, in confinement. And so, the having this wide array it gives technicians so many options. But I think for the end
Just
user
so
who's
our
listening,
listeners know, that's not a thing anymore.
that's not a, yeah. None of that is a thing anymore, guys. This is 25. This is me. My hair doesn't show the gray, but my experiences do. Because when I started off in my 20s as a helper on leak repair, and I was mainly doing bolting and field machining, but would go out and help on leak repair jobs, I thought the leak sealers were all absolutely crazy. I thought that they were nuts because of the stuff that they would have to be creative to make the sealant work. I mean, even in the fugitive emissions sort of legislation, leak sealing is literally called heroic repairs. And it's because you kind of had to be a bit crazy and a bit of a hero to do the things that you needed to do to get leaks to seal. But now, with a variety of technology in terms of
Procedures and
procedures and
safety.
processes and DHA, the right chemical compatibility, the right data sheets to select the right sealant, right down to 3D scanning the components. I mean, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, doing a measure up, you had to pick the technicians who were actually the best at measuring custom enclosures, because if you pick someone who is a little sloppy on their math and on their measurements, you'd manufacture a boat anchor, or you would build an enclosure that someone had to grind and peen to try to make it work. And so technology's come a long way. So let's pivot a little bit and just talk about trends in innovation and sort of where do you see the future of leak sealing going?
I still think leak sealing, like you've alluded to, these guys are problem solvers. So stuff in plants, some of these facilities are over 100 years old. Stuff's still going to wear out and need to be fixed. It's repair versus replace in the environment that we thrive as the compound manufacturer and you guys thrive from the perspective of being the contractors. So, I mean, we're constantly looking to evolve in terms of coming out with new sealants. I always say leak sealing's temporarily permanent because customer might say they want an enclosure or a clamp put on to last, to the next turnaround in 6 months. But we've had enclosures and clamps installed with our sealants where the plants put them on and they never leaked again and they've been on there for 20 years. So they leave them on there. So I think you're always going to have customers that think they want something just to last for a short period of time and it lasts longer than that. But in terms of evolution, I feel like on the composite side of things that wraps have become more and more prevalent in the last 10 years than they have been previously. So those are more accepted as not just being a band-aid, but more of a permanent fix. And you can design an engineered wrap to last 10, 15, 20 years, going through all the calculations and so forth. So I don't see leak sealing going away. I definitely think as long as plants are operating at capacity and not going to want to shut down and keep going and going, leak sealing is going to have a place. But I do see the wraps kind of becoming more and more prevalent as they have been in the last 10 years.
I agree. We've seen a lot of evolution and acceptance and new legislation in Canada that is giving that, and it gives customers more options, right? Mike, how about you? What are the trends? Where do you see things going? What are the big ideas that you're wanting to bring into play?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with the wraps. We've been leveraging AB539 for the last 4 or 5 years constantly. We're putting a lot of wraps on versus enclosures, but sometimes there is limitations. There just is. And enclosures and injectable sealants aren't going anywhere as far as I'm concerned. We'll be using them for years and years and years to come. And I think that the innovation side of it is something that Innovator really prides ourselves on, is bringing it in with new technologies with things like forge bonding. We have forge bonding applications that we can use for leak sealing, which is like forge bonding enclosures to tanks, or actually you can even forge bond injectors to valves with low walls so that you don't need to risk breaking through the thing before you have an injector bonded to the side of it. There's all sorts of really neat applications that we can use. We've thought about using pipe lock with valves on the side of them to put over and crimp onto broken off lines. Like, there's all sorts of ways that you can use technology and or other services that already pre-exist with using leak sealing methods. A common one that we discuss frequently is cracked lines. No one wants to go through registering and repairing a line with 6 or 7 cracks in it. If you use line crimping as a temporary method to get the line to isolate, and you can fill it with water and freeze it and pipe cut it, and you can even put on a wellless attachment with doing a ICR quick flange on there, and you can put a valve block on and get it put back into service same day. So using all of the tools kind of in our toolbox that may have been looked at with different services kind of into one service is, I think, what sets us apart. And I think that innovation of leak sealing will continue to go on. We're really about doing that at Strata and using it at Innovator as well. So we have 4 or 5 products that are under development. We're looking right now into creating our own SDSs for all of our own injectable gel plug isolations so that we at least have the ability to do those. There's a couple of things that we have underway over there that will do good once they hit the market.
Just bridging the gap a little, because I think two interesting and both dialed right in leak sealing and composite repair are all part of a solution to give end users a more well-rounded set of options to keep things going. And then, Mike, you talked about combining other services in a creative way to get there, whether it's crimping, freezing, weldless connections, all can be combined with leak sealing and wrap methods to get the customer to the most ideal outcome that they need for whether they need 2 months or 2 years, right? But I want to bridge the gap on one last thing, because one thing that can either help or hurt customers before companies like us get there is they spring a leak, they've got a pinhole, and we show up and they've got a rubber patch and they've got some sort of a come along slash ratchet strap, and they don't want to take it off, but they want us to fix around it. But Mike, in Strata, you've come up with a simple set of buckets that help can give that to the maintenance team so they have a more user-friendly and appropriate way to stop those leaks until we get there with a more permanent solution. Why don't you talk about your approach there?
Yeah, so it uses low profile clamps with a high temp Gore-Tex rubber so that we can temporarily patch it. There's even things in there like there's a face shield to get the thing stopped. There's a detailed procedure on how to apply it. And there's fillers, and even in some scenarios, a dunkable wrap that you can wrap around it. And if you want it to hold, for a day or two until we get there. But what that does both on the enclosure and the wrap side of things is saves them a ton of cost. And the reason being is if you put a roll bar clamp on there and they're not feeling safe to remove it afterwards, now your enclosure needs to flare out 6 inches on each side and you're putting more weight on the pipe than you need to. With these stopgap kits, you can get a really low profile application. And in most scenarios, it's no bigger than an inch and off sits maybe a half an inch, which is super manageable both for wrapping and for enclosure.
And so these are 5-gallon buckets that have everything in them, and it's a stopgap kit that maintenance teams can buy from Strata and use that instead of some of your other, to Steve's language, some other Band-Aid that might stop the leak, but is going to cost you a lot more to deal with when you've got to wrap it or design an enclosure if you've got to make it 30% bigger to work around their workaround. So guys,
Yeah, and they come in 1 to 12 inch and then 12 to 24 inch. So there's two kind of pre-made kits that everyone can purchase.
awesome. So last key takeaways for our listeners. Any key closing remarks, Steve? And where can people find and learn more about Deacon and Jetless?
Yep. No, we're excited about this partnership with you guys. And you can find out more about Deacon on the website. It's just going to be www.deaconindustries.com. So we have a sealant selector tool on there where you could put in your chemical process, temperature, and then indicate curing or non-curing, and it'll give you your options for injectables. We also have all of our information for our carbon fiber wrap, which is our rocket wrap, and our water activated fiberglass wrap, which is our seal wrap. That's on there, as well as our chemical compatibility charts that we upload and change information to each month. Looking forward to working through you guys. We think this is going to be really good for leak sealing contractors in Canada. We're just looking forward to, this opportunity to work together.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. And Mike, how about you to wrap things up? One key takeaway, and how do people find you at Strata?
Yeah, I think Steve hit it on the head. I don't really have much more to share when it comes to the sealant application. I think that the tool that is on his website, I mean, I've used it in the past. The other thing too is actually when people are getting into selecting their own sealants, I think that this manual is a great tool to have. Like I say, I keep one beside my desk, and so do all of our other fellows. We reference it frequently. So the sealant manual, and then you can reach us, and we're open with. We already have a pretty decent stock of injectable sealants and wraps and enclosures, and you can get us at stratatechnologies.com.
Awesome. And so for me, what I'll say, and this is more for our team who's listening and for customers, when it comes to links to the sealant selector, the chemical compatibility, and getting the sealant manual, we're going to make sure that our team get links to those for redirection onto the Strata Edge website as well, so that those resources can be found no matter where you go. I think that's a wrap, guys. and we'll seal it up with go to each of our websites on this episode. We'll make sure that the Deacon and the Strata Edge websites are in the comments when we publish this on our podcast channel and on our YouTube channel. And so we'll make sure that the resources are available for all of you listeners. And gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show and sharing this partnership and some deep sort of expert knowledge around leak sealing and sealants with our audience. I think this will be really helpful for all of our maintenance and engineering listeners out there. So once again, that's a wrap. And thanks for everyone for listening to this episode of the Industrial Innovators Podcast. Bye for now.